It is 9:21 a.m., 8th of December, 1914, and the German East Asian Squadron, under the command of Vice Admiral Maximilian von Spee, have surprised the British force sent into the South Atlantic to destroy him. The British crews are breakfasting and coaling, and, if von Spee wishes, he can bottle them up in Port William and bombard and torpedo his enemy at leisure, assuming he is willing to take damage from the Canopus. As it is, he chooses not to. Rejoined by the Gneisenau and the Nuremberg, he instead decides to run east in order to shake off this inconvenient British force. Vice Admiral Sir Frederick Doveton Sturdee is fully alert now, and the colliers, including a coal hulk looking suspiciously like Brunel's SS Great Britain, because it is, are cast off so the battle cruisers can put to sea. The armoured cruiser HMS Kent comes out to join the armed merchant cruiser Macedonia, and HMS Bristol and HMS Cornwall hurry to reassemble their engines. By 9:45 a.m, the light cruiser HMS Glasgow has joined the Kent outside the harbour. Next comes Stoddart's flagship HMS Carnarvon, and then HMS Inflexible and HMS Invincible. And then, as if by engine artificer magic, HMS Cornwall. It is now 10 a.m, and even though their coal bunkers are not as full as they would like, Sturdee's force work themselves up to 25 knots. Sturdee hosts the signal for general chase. As the Germans head eastward, von Spee and his officers catch sight of the two battle cruisers. They are overtaking their cruiser escort, their speed greater than all but the Glasgow. Their presence changes the game, making a battle inevitable and a British victory a certainty. This was a very bitter pill for us to swallow. We choked a little. The throat contracted and stiffened, for it meant a life and death struggle, or rather a fight ending in honourable death. Initially, those British battlecruisers hurry forward until only the Glasgow is in front. But as the sea miles pass by, it becomes obvious the heavier cruisers HMS Cornwall and HMS Carnarvon are struggling to keep up with the faster ships. The Cornwall can maintain 22 knots, whilst the Carnarvon is only managing 18. Sturdee orders his faster ships to slow down and allow the Carnarvon and the Cornwall to remain with the battlecruisers. At 11:32 a.m, he signals to his captains the message, "Ship's companies have time for next meal," which was very nice of him. Noon, and the German cruisers are not slowing down. But, although von Spee's ships have plenty of coal, they have not had quality time in a dry dock since the war began, and after so long at sea, his cruisers are not running at their best speed. He cannot outrun the British battlecruisers, and knows it. His best hope is to keep his squadron out of gunnery range long enough that the enemy runs out of daylight. After nightfall, he can evade them in the dark. After all, the Royal Navy does not practice night actions, as the Battle of Jutland will later prove. What he does not know is the hollow state of the British coal bunkers. Perhaps, if he did, he would continue to run until his opponents ran out of fuel. As it is, he is ignorant and will soon make a costly but courageous decision. Sturdee firmly believes he has the German squadron in the bag. But just to make certain, at 12:20 p.m, he orders his flagship and her stablemate the Inflexible to increase speed. He is now willing to risk leaving his slower armoured cruisers behind in order to bring von Spee to battle. At 12:47 p.m, Sturdee gives the order to engage the enemy. The Germans are some 6,500 yards away, a challenge for the 12-inch guns of the battlecruisers, but not impossible. The light cruiser Leipzig is the hindmost of von Spee's ships, and soon, with the extreme range becoming less and less extreme, the 12-inch shells begin to trouble the waters around her. It is now 1:20 p.m, and von Spee orders his embattled squadron to divide. His light cruisers are to run south, whilst he takes his 2 armoured cruisers about to engage his adversary. On the Invincible, Sturdee sees the German squadron break up. He has been expecting this, and has already instructed his captains. HMS Glasgow, HMS Kent, and HMS Cornwall all now turn to pursue the German light cruisers, whilst the 2 battle cruisers will deal with the oncoming Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. HMS Carnarvon is too slow to keep up with the 3 German light cruisers, so she labours to follow the battle cruisers. The wind is from the northwest, which will assist the Germans. The funnels of the Invincible and the Inflexible are belching out thick black coal smoke, and the wind is driving it towards the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau, masking the Germans. British gunnery will be impaired, and both von Spee and Sturdee are well aware of this. As this image of the Scharnhorst demonstrates, a large cruiser at full speed burns a great amount of coal and produces a great amount of coal smoke. Each admiral will now attempt to either use this to his advantage or try to mitigate the problem. Von Spee's primary armament is his 8.2-inch guns, with a range of 13,500 yards. Because the Invincible and the Inflexible carry 12-inch guns and have a greater range, 16,400 yards, von Spee must get close to his enemy, an enemy who will do all he can to hold on to his advantage. We cannot know whether von Spee appreciates the irony. This was the situation at the Battle of Coronel, but now the tables have turned, and yet the Germans get within range, and at 1:30 p.m. they opened fire on the nearly blind British battlecruisers. At 1:44 p.m. and on their 3rd salvo, they straddle the Invincible and hit her twice. Sturdee steers his battlecruisers northward and out of range. Von Spee turns his armoured cruisers south, knowing that Sturdee will want to keep his enemy in range of his 12-inch guns, and so he draws the British south. At 2:45 p.m, Sturdee opens fire. At 2:53 p.m, von Spee turns towards the British and hurries to get the battlecruisers in range of not only his 8.2-inch guns, but his 3.9-inch guns as well. The Invincible is hit again and again. Her sickbay and canteen are both struck by shells. The superior German gunnery and the thick, blinding smoke of the battlecruisers themselves convince Sturdee to turn his battlecruisers around. It is now 3:15 p.m, and the Invincible and the Inflexible come about to escape their clouds of coal smoke. It takes 15 minutes, but is highly effective. Better yet, the British are on the windward side of von Spee's squadron, and the gunners have a clearer view. Von Spee brings his armoured cruisers round, as if to cross ahead of the British. The Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau have taken damage on their port sides, and must turn to engage with their starboard guns. The British gunnery improves, and the Gneisenau is hit, flooding 2 boiler rooms, which cuts down her speed and causes a significant list to port. Despite their excellent gunnery, the German armoured cruisers are in a bad way. The British 12-inch shells may not be hitting them in great numbers, but those that do a lot of damage. The Scharnhorst is a fiery mess, and her hull is lower in the water than it ought to be. Yet, von Spee's flagship continues to fight until around 4 p.m, when her guns fall silent. Sturdee orders a signal raised, demanding the cruiser strike her colours. Whilst those colours still fly, the German armoured cruiser is a combatant on the field of battle, and so she must be fired upon. The Scharnhorst does not strike her colours. Instead, she turns towards the British battlecruisers and crawls through the water in a vain attempt to cover for the Gneisenau. Unfortunately for the embattled Germans, HMS Carnarvon has finally caught up with Sturdee's battlecruisers, and now it is 3 against 2. The Scharnhorst capsizes and sinks at 4:17 p.m. She carries all of her 52 officers and 188 crew down with her, including Admiral von Spee himself. She plunges down through the cold, dark waters of the South Atlantic, righting herself as she does so, and crashes into the silts of the seafloor some 5,280 feet, or over 1.5 kilometers, below the battle still raging above, there to rest in pitch darkness, unseen until her discovery 105 years later. But even as the Scharnhorst reaches the seabed, the Gneisenau is still fighting, and there is little opportunity to search for survivors. When the Carnarvon reaches the spot only 15 minutes later, her crew find only debris. Now the guns of both the Invincible and the Inflexible are targeting the Gneisenau, but the smoke is obscuring the German cruiser and making her a difficult target. It is now 4:45 p.m, and in an act of frustration, Captain Richard Phillimore of the Inflexible steers his ship out of the British battle line, and so clear of the smoke, sees the Gneisenau and opens fire. The gunnery hits the German armoured cruiser hard, although a degree of respite comes when Sturdee orders the Inflexible back into the battle line. By 5:15 p.m, the Gneisenau seems to have run out of ammunition, and the British move in closer, Sturdee signalling to his cruisers to cease fire. But then the German cruiser opens fire again. The British return fire. At 5:50 p.m, Sturdee again orders his ships to cease fire. At 6:02 p.m, the Gneisenau sinks. She is deliberately scuttled, with her colours still flying. Her captain, Gustav Merker, has his surviving crew cheer 3 times for the Kaiser before ordering all men overboard. On the Inflexible, there is cheering, until Phillimore orders silence and all hands to stand at attention. The task of rescue begins. As the British cruisers move slowly and carefully closer, boats damaged in the fighting are quickly patched up and launched. The Invincible picks up 108 German seamen, of whom 14 are found to be already dead. The Inflexible saves 62, and the Carnarvon saves 20. Only 176 of the Gneisenau's crew are saved. Captain Merker is not one of them.